Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelk, joined by Matthew Sytak. So here's where we're at on the phones, guys. All right? I'm being completely transparent. So if you've been listening to the show a couple days ago, we started getting that weird, scratchiness on the phone lines. I've spent most of my last few days trying to fix this problem, and I have failed miserably, to be totally honest with you. I changed out all the cable wires, I put in a new box, and it's still happening. So I think this is an actual Verizon phone line issue, which we're working on, as you guys well know. Sometimes getting phone people in to help you with things takes a little while, so we're working on it. But I do have something new in place today that I think's going to work better. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to be better. But with the new device, it's actually the same one I used when I was stuck in my house during the pandemic, and I can only take one phone call at a time. So that's where we're at. We're going to take one phone call at a time, guys. If you call in and it's busy or it just keeps ringing, eventually when whoever we have on hold is done, we'll take the next caller, and so on and so forth. So just be patient. We're doing our best. Hopefully we'll be back to normal soon enough, but that's where we are. Giants and Seahawks. Giants trying to get back to normal here, Matt. They're 1-3. As we've talked about for the last week or so. It's been a week since the Giants have played a game, by the way, Thursday to Thursday. Could be better, but it's not. So they need to figure out how to get a W. And, of course, the big news this week that we got yesterday, Malik Neighbors still not at a concussion protocol. Still in the early phases of it, according to Brian Dable, which, unless there's a lot of progress quickly, I think it would make his ability to play on Sunday at this point to be very questionable. We'll have to wait and see how he progresses in practice today, tomorrow, and, of course, on Saturday when they do their walkthrough before they travel out there. But that's a situation where he's the Giants' focal point of their offense, and without him, I think it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, you definitely say that. Through the first 4 games of the season, Malik Neighbors, I believe, has the highest target share percentage of anyone in the NFL.
He has 10 more targets than the next highest guy, Nico Collins.
There you go. Mm-hmm. So, yes, taking him out of the equation would certainly change the equation significantly for the Giants offense. And in addition to that, while maybe not quite as, alarming yet, but Wan'Dale Robinson was also on the injury report. I believe it was a heel injury.
He was limited, yep.
He was limited, so he was out there, which is obviously, at least a little more promising than Malik not being out there at all.
And Brian Dable didn't seem to indicate he thought there was a risk that he wouldn't play. He wasn't really asked about it either, so we'll have to wait and see with him.
Yeah, when he was talking about the injuries, he mentioned Malik, he mentioned Drew Phillips and Adoree Jackson, who both did not practice as well, and then he mentioned Devin Singletary, which obviously he's been leading the run game the first month of the season. Devin Singletary did not practice on Wednesday due to a groin injury, I believe, that he picked up in the game against the Cowboys last week. Coach Dable said I don't know if he explicitly said it, but there seemed to be at least a little more optimism around Devin Singletary. He said that, he ran around on Monday. The team was here, that he ran around and he felt good. So there seems to be at least a little more optimism that Devin Singletary can, get back on the field and play this Sunday in Seattle. But based on what Coach Dable said yesterday, and, he will meet for his weekly flyby with the media in a few minutes while we're on, and I'm sure he'll give another Malik update of whether or not Malik will be able to go out there in any capacity. If he's not out there today in any capacity, then I don't see how he will get back in time and clear the concussion protocol before they fly to Seattle less than 48 hours from now.
Check out Dan Salomon's Twitter feed, by the way, for any news out of his little flyby.
Yeah, so, if Malik isn't out there today, it's definitely not a good sign. When Darius Slayton had a concussion a couple weeks ago, he suffered a concussion on Sunday, and I believe on the Wednesday, the first practice of the following week, I believe he was out there in the red non-contact uniform, which is further along than where Malik seems to be right now. And Malik's concussion occurred a full week ago, last Thursday. So the fact that he hasn't been able to clear the early stages yet, at least that we know of, maybe Coach Dable says something different when he speaks in a few minutes, it's definitely not a good sign for Sunday.
No, I would say certainly not. And we'll have to keep an eye on it and exactly see how it goes here. But that's important. You still didn't have Adoree Jackson or Drew Phillips back on the field yet with their calf injuries in terms of the defense. And, the Dallas Cowboys, they had CeeDee Lamb. They didn't have, Brandon Cooks is a good player. Jalen Tolbert's fine. But They don't have a trio of receivers like the Seahawks do, where you have DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, who's getting a little bit older. He's not the same as he used to be, but Jackson Smith-Njigba is certainly a really talented young player. So this Giants secondary with their injuries out there they're gonna get challenged again this week against a Seattle passing attack that, even though they lost the game on Monday night to the Lions, was frankly phenomenal. And they moved the ball up and down the field. 38 first downs in the game, right? Was it for the Seahawks? So yep. Geno Smith played great. He's got a lot of weapons. Kenneth Walker's phenomenal. This Seahawks offense is going to challenge this Giants defense as much, if not more, than any other offense the Giants have faced this year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the defense's biggest test to date. I mean, I know week one, obviously the Vikings, that matchup, the Vikings offense is also playing out of its mind right now and looks great, but just the pure number of weapons that this Seahawks offense has and all over the place, I think this is going to be a huge challenge. I mean, Geno Smith comes into this game leading the NFL in pass attempts, pass completions, and passing yards. And while that hasn't, resulted in a ton of touchdowns yet, he has 4 touchdowns with 4 interceptions. As you said, they have a 3-headed passing attack just from the receivers that is up there among the top receiving trios in the NFL. I mean, DK Metcalf, he produces against anyone he's going up against. Doesn't matter the corner, doesn't matter the team. He is just one of those guys that's like a freak of nature with his size and athletic ability that is going to present a tough challenge for any opposing defense. Jackson Smith-Njigba, as you mentioned, second-year wideout, was a player that a lot of people said going into the year that he could be one of those breakout second-year receivers. And while he hasn't had, I would say, like a full breakout yet, he certainly has played well. I mean, he leads the Seahawks in receptions with 25, one more than DK Metcalf. It just hasn't turned into a ton of yardage production yet. And when it comes to Tyler Lockett, yes, he is getting older, but he still has potentially the most reliable hands of any one of these receivers on the Seahawks.
Yeah.
He seems to catch almost every ball that's thrown his way. And, one thing we see with him is typically when he catches it, he'll try to gain some extra yardage, but more so than any other receiver in the NFL, I think he just immediately hits the ground.
He gets down.
He does not want to take hits because I think he knows he's, as you said, going up in age. And when you get up in age, those hits, they start to hurt a little bit more. So very talented wide receiver trio. And you can't forget, their 2 running backs also play very big parts in the passing game. In addition to, being very strong runners. I mean, Kenneth Walker could be one of the best running backs in the league right now.
You better tackle that dude or he's going for 6.
Yeah. I mean, on Monday against Detroit's top-ranked run defense, who no other team had been able to run the ball at all against the Lions, he took 12 carries for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns, and then caught another 4 passes for 30-something yards. So they have a 2-headed rushing attack, and while Walker will definitely get more touches, at least as a runner, Zach Charbonnet is a pretty big part of this offense overall. He will spell Kenneth Walker at times, but he will also catch passes in the passing game. He also, I think, had 4 or 5 receptions against the Lions on Monday night for like 40 yards around that. So, and then we haven't even mentioned the tight ends, Noah Fant, AJ Barner, the rookie who just caught his first touchdown last week. Like, this is a very talented Seattle offense who, coming off a tough loss, but it is certainly was not the offense's fault. I mean, they became the first team in NFL history to complete 38 first downs and lose a game. And that's only because the Lions offense went absolutely bananas between Jared Goff not throwing an incompletion and the running backs combining for 3 rushing touchdowns. But this Seahawks offense is a big, big challenge for any team. And it's going to be a tough matchup for the Giants on Sunday.
Yeah, because Geno Smith's playing great. I mean, he looks like a top 3-4 quarterback in the NFC right now. He's playing as well as anyone. I know New Yorkers, they have, and understandably, they have an idea of what Geno Smith is. It's the same things we got before the Week 1 game against Sam Darnold, and I'm just warning you guys, Geno Smith's really good now. All right? He manages to pocket well. He moves. He throws on the move. He will put the ball into small places. He trusts his receivers to make plays. He is a legit player. You mentioned the defense. Let's get to that next, and then we'll circle back to this if we have to. The Seahawks defense was a disaster on Monday night. Now, I don't want to kill him too bad They were missing basically their 2 starting defensive tackles in Byron Murphy and Leonard Williams. Their 2 edge rushers in Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe. They're missing one of their starting linebackers in Jerome Baker. Julian Love gets injured in the first half of that game with a thigh injury. So they had 20 players on their injury report on Wednesday. We're not going to have an update on one of these until later today. They're on the West Coast. Obviously, things come out later. But Byron Murphy still didn't practice. Jonathan Hankins did not practice. That was personal. He'll probably be back. Boye Mafe didn't practice with this knee injury. Tyrell Dodson, one of the linebackers, he did not practice with an ankle and shoulder injury. Defensively, I'll just stick with that because that's what we're talking about. Jerome Baker, Julian Love, Uchenna Nwosu, Leonard Williams were all limited. So their defense is a mash unit right now, which if these guys don't play, there should be some opportunities for the Giants to make some plays. You know, they might not be Jared Goff 18 for 18 perfect, but there should be some openings and ability, especially up front, to win, given how many of their front 7 defenders are banged up.
Yeah, it is important to note that the Seahawks just had a walkthrough yesterday because they played on Monday night, so quick turnaround. So this was a projection.
Good point.
But yeah, I was the one that had to log on at 9:15 last night and put this onto Giants.com.
Is that when it came out, 9:15? I didn't realize that. Wow.
It came out at like 8:45, and then I saw it at 9:15. So yeah, I knew that it was 20 players long because it took me a while to add those guys in. But
I'm surprised you're still conscious after that Mets game.
Well, let's not get started on that. But yeah, I will say, though, that based on some of the reports I saw leading into the Seahawks game on Monday, it seemed like some of those defensive players that you just talked about were the ones that did not play. It seemed like beat reporters from Seattle were saying that those guys are potentially close to returning. So while they may not get everyone back, I would say that there's probably a decent chance that at least some of those defensive players that did not suit up on Monday night have a chance of playing on Sunday, which would obviously give the Seahawks a really big boost because, as you mentioned, basically half of their starting defense was either didn't play or was unable to finish that game. And when you're playing against the Lions, you need all the help you can get, obviously.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, they are good. But yeah, this Seattle defense, when healthy, it's going to look at least somewhat similar to what we've seen from the Baltimore Ravens in years past, because they have
not as blitz heavy,
but their new head coach is Mike McDonald, who comes over from the Ravens. So not as blitz heavy, but there'll at least be some shades of the old Giants defense here, because from when Wink Martindale ran the defense for a couple of seasons, Mike McDonald was working under Wink Martindale for I don't know how many years in Baltimore, and
then he went off, did his own thing in Michigan. I think while he's from the tree, I feel like he has kind of created his own brand here.
Yeah, it definitely does not look exactly or even a lot like Wink's defense, but it'll have some shades to it.
Sure.
But the defense, their strong suit so far this season has been getting off the field. They go, even with Detroit doing basically whatever they wanted on Monday night, the Seahawks still have the 4th best third down defense in the NFL. And while it's only been 4 attempts on 4th down, they've only given up 1 4th down conversion out of 4. So they have the 2nd ranked 4th down defense. But either way, they do a great job of getting off of the field, which the Giants' third down offense we've gotten some mixed results the first few weeks. But it's definitely it hasn't been, I guess, quite up to where I know Brian Daboll would want it to be. And so going up against this defense that at least appears to be getting somewhat healthier, that's just another thing that's going to be a tough challenge for this Giants team.
Yeah, look, the Seahawks rankings on defense are all very impressive. Top 10, DVOA, EPA, whatever you want to look at, some of the simple metrics, yards allowed per game, per play, they're all top 10. They're excellent.
I think I know what you're about to say.
Here's the problem.
Yep.
They got lit up this past week, but they were injured. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of their first 3 games either. Now, they played the Broncos with Bo Nix. They played the Patriots.
Bo Nix's NFL debut.
With Jacoby Brissett, and they've clearly struggled scoring points this year. And then they played the Miami Dolphins with a combination of Skylar Thompson and I believe Tim Boyle,
Yep.
I believe, with the 2 quarterbacks in that game.
Yep.
So how much do we take out of those defensive statistics when you're playing 3 of the teams that at that point probably three of the worst offenses in the league in terms of how they performed over the course of this entire season. The Dolphins, of course, with the injury to the quarterback position. So how much do you take out of that given what their schedule's been? I don't know. Here's what I do know. They have a lot of talented players. You know, I didn't even talk about the guys they have in their secondary. You got Julian Love. You got Weatherspoon outside, who knows a good player. You have Reek Woolen, who's a really good cornerback. So they have good players in the back end. They have a really good head coach in Mike McDonald, who we know knows how to call a good defense. And they have good players up front that are happen to be hurt right now. But how much are those really elite offensive metrics shaded by the fact they played the Broncos, Patriots, and Dolphins without Tua in the first 3 weeks? I don't know the answer to that. But I will say this. You mentioned getting off the field and expertise. This is another thing. Their coverage tendencies are impossible to figure out. PFF tracks how often teams play certain coverages, right? And they are literally between like 12th and 16th in the NFL in terms of coverage frequency in every single major coverage. Man, cover 1, cover 2, quarters, cover 3, cover 6. They're all like right in the middle of the league. So Mike McDonald is going to vary his coverages. He's going to disguise his coverages a ton in the back end and make the quarterback take that extra beat to figure out, all right, well, what zone, what pass defense are they showing pre-snap, and then what do they move into post-snap? He's one of these guys that once you get the ball snapped, guys are shifting and moving all over the place to try to confuse the quarterback. Now, that works really well when you have all these pass rushers up front that are hurt right now getting after the quarterback. So it's not as effective when you can't get any pass pressure. The quarterback can sit back there an extra beat, figure out what defense they're in, deliver the football. One other thing that jumped out at me, the Seahawks have not allowed a lot of big passes down the field this year. StatSync puts a stat out every week. Opponent quarterback rating on passes that travel at least 20 yards in the air. You know what the Seahawks opposing quarterback rating is when teams try to throw 20-plus yards in the air? 2.3. 2.3. They've allowed one pass completion this year. I looked at the air yard stats. I don't have it in front of me. I believe one pass completion this year that has traveled more than 20 yards in the air, or maybe 2. So I know people, including myself, are desperate to get those deep passes going and connecting with those deep passes down the field. This might not be the week for it, given how well Seattle has played those types of throws over the course of the year. Just something to keep in mind with how Mike McDonald does his defense. He wants to keep everything in front. He doesn't want to let guys get behind. So I would be cautious about that. The actual explosive plays they've given up, it's more towards the middle of the league, which means there's a lot of short catches and yak, which, boy, wouldn't it be nice to have Malik Neighbors. But that's where we are. So I think that's how the Giants offense might have to try to attack this Seattle defense. I don't think you're going to get a bunch of stuff over the top in this game.
Well, the one thing I will say about that is, again, just going back to who they faced. I mean, Bo Nix
that's a good point
does
too.
not throw the ball downfield, period.
Yep.
Jacoby Brissett doesn't really do that much either. And then between Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle, those guys aren't going to be completing too many throws 20-plus yards down the field.
Even the Lions didn't, though. That's the thing. They had those intermediate and runs.
I don't know. But what about that Jamison Williams long touchdown? Was that not 20 yards
I believe
downfield?
that was caught between probably 12 and 18 yards down the field. Would be my bet. I'd have to look at it again, but I bet you that wasn't 20 yards down the field. I could be wrong, though.
Okay.
That might be the one play.
Yeah.
that might be the one.
Yeah. But, yeah, you're right that Giants might have a little bit of trouble getting those explosive plays down the field going this week. But just the same thing we've been talking about with this defense. It's a little hard to tell how much of their success, I don't want to say is real, because it is real. They did it the last 4 weeks, but how much of it was just due to who they were playing as opposed to what the skills and talents of the defense actually is. I guess we'll find out on Sunday. We have an update.
What do you got?
From Coach Dable? Malik Neighbors is making progress but remains in the concussion protocol and will not be on the field today. I don't want to speculate, but that doesn't sound too great for his chances. You never know. With concussions,
things can happen quickly sometimes,
exactly.
But you have to have levels of progression throughout the week. So if he's not on the field tomorrow, I do not believe, according to NFL rules, that he's going to be able to play on Sunday.
Yeah, and even if he is, who's to say?
He might not anyway.
Clear.
Correct, yes.
And additionally, Devin Singletary will also not – he will work off to the side. So
That's
he will
disappointing.
not participate in team practice. But Adoree Jackson and Drew Phillips will both practice in some capacity today, which Coach Dable said, quote unquote, is a good sign for them.
Calves you got to be careful with. Those are
For
tricky.
sure.
You got to be careful with those calf injuries. But
For
it is
sure.
a good sign.
But if the Giants defense could get one or both of those guys back for Sunday's game, that would be a humongous boost to the secondary.
I love to
and
see
the defense overall.
I'd love to see Phillips match up with Smith and Jigba in this game.
Oh, me
That'll
too.
be fun.
That would be a lot of fun to watch. But in terms of the Giants' offense, first of all, if Devin Singletary is unable to go, that is the clear case of next man up. Tyrone Tracy, Eric Gray, here's your chance. And I'm assuming if he's inactive, they would call Turbo up from the practice squad. I think he's the only running back on the practice squad. But regardless, mainly Tyrone Tracy, I feel like this is going to be would be his first chance to really show what he can do with extended action. We've seen him carry the ball a couple of times throughout the first few games, mostly just to spell and give Singletary a breather. If he ends up being the starting back, he's going to get plenty of action. So this would be his first chance to kind of show what he can do. And when it comes to Malik, I mean, the rest of the receivers, maybe the tight ends, those are guys that are going to have to really step up and, have their best performance of the season. I mean, I don't know how many more targets Wan'Dale Robinson can add with what he's already been getting, but some of the other guys between Darius Slade and Jalen Hyatt would definitely see the field more if Malik is inactive. And I think if Malik ends up being inactive, could be a chance for Theo Johnson to get a little more involved in the passing game, and Daniel Bellinger, finally get the tight ends mixed in a little bit more than what they have been doing. But if one or two or both of those guys on offense are unable to go, it's definitely going to take a big team effort to make up for their missed production.
201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Just a reminder, folks, again, working through the phone issues the last couple of days. We have our top men working on this. We hope to have it resolved soon enough. Well, we think we have one line working today. It's not going to be perfect. So if you're trying to get in and it's either busy or it keeps ringing, once we get our one person off hold, we'll slide you in if you ring through, and we'll get you on the air. So let's try to keep the calls tight today, folks, to avoid some of the crunchiness. Let's get to the point quickly. Try not to yell into your phone. That also doesn't seem to help the problems either. So let's just try to get through these as quickly as possible. You can also send tweets in to me. Just at Schmelk, #GiantsChat, or you can send in emails to bigbluekickoff@gmail.com. I literally have that open in front of me, bigbluekickoff@gmail.com, and we will hit all of that for the next 35 minutes or so as we roll through Big Blue Kickoff Live on this Thursday. All right, let's go to Big Ed in Maryland. He will lead us off today. Big Ed, what's going on?
Hey, Big John, what's up, buddy?
Big Ed, let's get to it quick here, okay?
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it sounds really good. Way better than yesterday. Whole lot clearer. So most calls we should be good today. Because it seems the problem seems to be fixed.
Okay, let's get to it, Ed. Come on.
All right. So you want to get to it, huh? All right, here you do. Take the tight ends and go down the field on them. That's who you throw to. Give them a different look because you don't have neighbors. That's one. Second, if you're going to run the ball, make sure you block and run the ball right. You can't take losses in this kind of game against Seattle in Seattle. As far as the defense goes, man, y'all just play out. Y'all just go be ball hogs that you've been. You've been playing excellent defense for the most part of this whole season. Just continue it, and we're good. And I think I'll leave it at that and let the rest go, man. I'll talk to y'all probably even tomorrow or next week.
Thank you, Big Ed. Appreciate the call, man. Yeah, so look, I think you have to get the tight ends involved at some point. So I think that's kind of where we're at, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of the defense with, the run game, he's right with, this is a game or an away environment that the Giants really cannot afford to be playing well behind the sticks most of the game. I mean, that goes for, negative runs, sacks. I mean, because once you get into second and long, third and long situations, that is when that crowd in Seattle starts to erupt. And, I mean, that is one of the toughest stadiums to play in for an opposing team.
Yep.
Across the entire NFL. And you don't want to give those fans even more of a reason to get loud and cheer by playing behind the stick. So I agree with him there that, they got to try to minimize the amount of negative or no gain runs as best as they can. Better than what we saw last week against Dallas.
Yeah, and try to not go down early in this game, right? That gets the crowd into it. You have to throw the ball a lot more if you can't get things going in the run game. And then the crowd becomes a factor. You got to silent count it. They can get off the ball much quicker or as quickly as your offensive tackles can. And that could be a big difference in this game. I mean, the game was at MetLife last year. Seahawks sacked Giants quarterbacks 10 times in that game. Now, just to give you an idea of how much better it is this year, folks, the Giants have given up 9 sacks this year. So they've given up fewer sacks in 4 games than they gave up in 1 game against the Seahawks last year.
And I think that game was week 4 last year.
It was week 5. No, it was week 4, yes. Week 5 was Miami. Week 4 was Seattle. You're correct, yes.
Yeah.
So it's better. You just got to start turning these things into victories. 201-939-4513. I do find it interesting, Matt, heading into this game, how the Giants need to get this run game going. That was one of the more disappointing aspects of that loss to Dallas last week. And, whether it's Devin Singletary or Tyrone Tracy or Eric Gray, I imagine if Singletary can't go, it'll probably be a little bit more Tracy than Gray, based on what we've seen so far this season in terms of play time. But I'm interested to see what Tracy can do with a full workload.
Yeah, me too. And, depending on the Seahawks injury status throughout the week, he could be looking at facing a very depleted Seahawks run defense. I mean, you mentioned Leonard Williams didn't play last week on the injury report again. Byron Murphy missed last week, didn't practice yesterday. A couple of their linebackers, they're missing a lot of the guys that contribute in a big way in the run game. If those guys are unable to go, then Tyrone Tracy, again, not that it would be an easy matchup because it still is going to be tough against this run defense, but it'll be a little easier for him. And you would hope that the offensive line would be able to sort of take advantage of going up against some potential reserves and do a little bit better of a job of creating some open running lanes. I mean, last week, Devin Singletary was getting hit at or behind the line of scrimmage. It seemed like almost every carry, every time he touched the ball. So got to give the running backs a chance, whether it's Singletary, Tracy, or Gray. So that's going to require the offensive line to get a little bit of a better push on the line of scrimmage.
Randy McCarthy sends an email, has a question about the Giants' cap space situation. Obviously, we've seen around the league that Devontae Adams has asked for a trade. He's curious to see what the Giants' cap situation could be, whether or not they'd be able to fit a salary like that in. Here's his question. Based on SpotTrack, the Giants are around $3.5 million. He remembers the team restructuring Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence, maybe more during training camp. We had around $18 million in cap space. Where'd all that go, and can they afford a trade for Adams? I don't remember when they had $18 million of cap space, to be totally honest with you.
So that was a Field Yates from ESPN tweeted that out. And when he did, I was like, I don't know where he's coming up with that number. It was after someone got restructured and Field Yates put that number out there, but that number was not anywhere else. So, and it was also right before the, NFL accounting switched from just the top 51 to the full roster, which for every team across the league through training camp, the only top 51 players or salaries on your roster count towards the salary cap. Once you get to the end of training camp, then everyone on your team, everyone on the practice squad, injured reserve, any dead money, dead contracts that you got rid of, all those numbers get added to your yearly salary. So I don't think that number was ever actually at $18 million.
So that $18 million was the pre-initial 53-man roster, which then, to your point, changes all the math.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. I from my understanding, based on all the reporting I've seen, and again, this is not official from the Giants. They don't release their cap space or anything like that, but simply based on reporting and what Over the Cap and SpotTrack has, I mean, they wouldn't have restructured guys if they had a ton of space under the salary cap. The reason they restructure guys is to create space. And remember, every time you elevate somebody from the practice squad every week, that's a game check.
Yep.
So they add up over the course of the year, and they go on your salary cap. So you need anywhere from $5 to $7 million just to get you through week 1 to week 17. and depending on how many guys you elevate, guys that go on injured reserve, guys you bring in to replace the guys that go on injured reserve. It seems like, it's a veteran minimum. What could that be? Well, everything adds up, right? Every penny counts when you're doing your budget. You might say, I'll buy this thing. It's only $20. Well, then if you do that 8 times, you buy 8 $20 items, it adds up on your, weekly budget, right? So, I think, look, the Giants can always do more restructuring. They've done their contracts so that they're very balanced, so that they have the opportunity to do those things. That's why Joe Schoen structures them the way he does. But I don't feel like they would want to do that to bring in a wide receiver. I think Adams is, 31 at
32.
this point? He's 32 already. So I don't think that they would want to do something like that to bring in an older player, given where this team is in terms of their building process.
Yeah, I agree. Well, first of all, Joe Schoen, while he has restructured some contracts since he got here a few years ago, it's not something he likes to do.
Correct.
And he's spoken about it in that when you restructure a deal, yes, you could free up a little bit of cap space for this season, but it ends up adding to your, salary cap for the next year or the following year. It's not like that money just kind of disappears. So Joe Schoen has not, so far since he got here, has not liked pushing too much money into the future because he likes having a lot of salary cap space moving forward. When this team hopes to be building closer and closer to becoming a Super Bowl contender. So I agree. I don't think that they're going to do a significant salary cap restructure to free up the, $8 or so million or whatever it would cost to just have the cap space to bring in Devontae Adams. And that we haven't even talked about the draft capital that it would cost. I mean, the reports are saying that the Raiders want a 2nd-round pick, potentially plus some later round picks. Even if that ends up turning into them settling for a 3rd-round pick and maybe a pick or two the following year, I don't think the Giants are in a space where they want to be trading away all their future draft picks for, as you said, a 32-year-old receiver.
And Adams, I believe, is also $72 million over the next 2 seasons, too. So
yeah, whatever team trades for him, there will be a restructure of his deal.
Correct.
For sure, because no one is taking him on and keeping those 2 years as is. But he could restructure it, but regardless, with where the Giants are right now, with how this roster is constructed, one of the youngest teams in the league, I think the Giants lead the NFL in rookie snaps, to then go trade draft capital and pretty significant draft capital for a 32-year-old receiver when you also just use the 6th overall pick on a wide receiver this year, doesn't really go with how this roster has already been constructed.
And you used a 2nd-round pick on a receiver 3 years ago, a 3rd-round pick on a receiver 2 years ago. You've put a lot of resources into the position. All right, let's try Len in Columbia, Maryland. Len, what's going on, man?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're doing okay.
Good. I'll try to make it quick. A quick question about Seattle's coaching staff. Is McDonald calling the defensive plays, or is Leslie Frazier the defensive coordinator? Do you have any idea?
I'm sorry, Len, say that again?
Is McDonald calling the defensive plays?
Yes, I believe so.
Or is Leslie Frazier involved?
I believe McDonald's calling the plays.
At least going into week 1, McDonald said that he would be the play caller in week 1, and I doubt that's changed in the last few weeks.
Okay. It's kind of unusual for a defensive-minded head coach to call the defensive plays on the field. It's more offensive-minded coaches calling the offensive plays than with the defensive guy. So I was just curious about that. I thought maybe Frazier was involved. Hey, listen, forget special team elevations. If Neighbors can't go, you got to get Hodgkins up. We're really, once you get past those first 4 guys on our wide receiver core, there's nothing there. We got to get Hodgkins up, and maybe go more fullback if Singletary isn't there, and help out the converted wide receiver who's going to start at running back if Singletary isn't there. Hey, my main question, though, and it gets back to dual roles for the coaches, and I'd really like a minute of your time on this if you could. I'll hang up and wait for your answer. I'm going to use the word over his head, but quite frankly, I don't like Dable doing both jobs. I think he's a head coach. I don't think he's a head coach and an offensive coordinator. I know there are guys who do it. I just don't think this is working. Hey, I'll get off. Wait for your comments. Thanks for taking my call. Go Giants.
Thank you, Len. Appreciate the call. Look, if this was his first year as head coach, we've talked about this when they took the job. There are concerns, I think, when you're doing the job for the first try and trying to call plays, learn how to be a head coach. I think now that he's figured out that part of it, I haven't noticed any mechanical things where it's like, he's not focusing on two things. He's messing up his time management, things like that. I haven't noticed any of those issues with Dable this year.
Me neither.
So, and I think he's done a really good job calling plays, to be honest with you. So, I don't necessarily think that there's been a problem with that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think most offensive head coaches are not all, but most of them, I believe, call the plays on offense.
Yeah, almost all of them do now, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, look, Dable, the first 2 years he was here as head coach, did not call the plays. Year 3, clearly, the offense hadn't been performing up to the level that Coach Dable wants or anyone wants. So he has taken over. And while the results through the first 4 weeks, again, probably not where Coach Dable wants them to be, there are signs that the offense as a unit is making progress, even if the points have not come yet. And I get it. It's a results business. You need to score points. You need to win games. No one is denying that. But at the same time, there have been some signs that show that as a unit, they are progressing and going towards the direction of where everyone wants them to be. And I think Brian Dable being the play caller has played a pretty big role in that.
Let's go back to the emails again. BigBlueKickoff@gmail.com. Get your emails in. We're happy to answer those questions. Aiden Fink wants Brian Dable to be a little bit more aggressive. He feels like he's way more conservative than he was early in his tenure as Giants head coach, and he thinks especially the loudest stadium in the NFL against a team who scored at least 23 points every game so far, they should really start going forward more, especially in the red zone, to try to get those touchdowns. Your thoughts?
I mean, Coach Dable was asked about this yesterday. I think every situation is different. Not every fourth down is created equal. There could be a situation this week where the Giants have it 4th and goal on the 3 and Brian Dable decides to go for it. Last week he thought that was not the right move, but that doesn't mean that given, put in the same situation this week that he won't go for it if that's what he thinks is going to help the team, their best chances to win the game. So as you talked about before, this is a Seahawks team that is defending the deep ball very well this year. So in that sense, I don't know if this is the best opportunity to be taking a ton of shots deep down the field. You want to take some, of course, but especially with, it looking like Malik Neighbors might not be able to suit up. That's your best player on offense. That won't be out there. So it's going to make things a little tougher overall. I think if Malik Neighbors is unable to play and Devin Singletary, or even if it's just Malik Neighbors, it's definitely going to require Brian Dable to get, I believe, more creative and, come up with a creative game plan to sort of make up for the lost production that we've seen from Malik Neighbors the last month.
No, and the other Giant wide receivers have to play better. Let's call it like it is. There's been too many drops. Jalen Hyde hasn't had many opportunities, but he's been quiet. Now, again, hasn't really been out there a ton, so I'm not going to knock him for that. He'll get more opportunities now, though. Now you're going to be out there. So the guys that are out there, they're going to have to make plays. Yeah, could you, to Len's point, activate and elevate a guy like Isaiah Hodgins to help as a receiver? Sure. They could do something like that. I don't think that's out of the question. Want someone with a little bit more receiving experience? I'd be fine with that. But this is going to be on Robinson, Slayton, and Hyatt to pick up the slack. Slayton's a professional wide receiver. Robinson and Hyatt were both day 2 draft picks. Step up. And you're not going to be Malik Neighbors. You don't have to be Malik Neighbors, but you need to be productive to allow this Giants offense to function in a balanced way with the run game and the pass game against the Seattle defense, that allowed Jared Goff to go an entire game without throwing an incomplete pass. So you should have opportunities here. The wide receivers have to take advantage of them.
Definitely. And I will just say that through 4 games, the Giants have gone for it 10 times on 4th down already, which I don't know.
Has it really been 10?
They are 6 for 10 on 4th down attempts this year.
I wonder if there's a league leader on that. I'm curious.
Some of that definitely is because of, week 1 they were playing from behind for basically the entire game.
Sure.
But just in comparison, the Seahawks have only had 4 fourth down attempts this year. So while maybe Brian Daboll hasn't been as aggressive as some people want him to be, yeah, they are tied for the 3rd most fourth down attempts in the NFL.
That's amazing. I did not realize that.
So it's not like he hasn't been, choosing his moments to be aggressive. So
Dolphins are top at 13. Browns are second at 12. Both those teams have played from behind the last couple of weeks, to your point. But you know what? You say that. The Giants played from behind in week 1. They were never in a desperate comeback situation in weeks 2, 3, and 4.
no.
Like they were within 1 score in most of those in those games, or leading. So how about that?
Yeah,
That's a nice little nugget.
So they're 6 of 10 on fourth down, and when you think about it, as great as Malik Neighbors has been, at least in the Commanders game, he had the drop on fourth down, which would have made it 7 of 10. And then in last week's game against the Cowboys, while it would have been a great catch, he at least had an opportunity to make that fourth down catch at the end of the game.
That would have been 8 of 10.
On the play that he was concussed. So that would have then been 8 and 10. And then all of a sudden, I don't think people would be questioning how aggressive Brian Daboll has been if those 2 plays are completed. So.
And then the Giants, by the way, have the 8th highest fourth down conversion percentage at 60%.
There you go.
And it hasn't been, by the way, these haven't been 4th and 1s either. I think there's been 1 or 2 of those, but it has usually been 4th and medium or 4th and short, like between 2 and 4 yards. Like they haven't had, like, I'm trying to remember how many Jones has what, maybe 2 quarterback sneaks this year, something like that. It hasn't been a lot.
Something like that. And I know the Malik Neighbors jet sweep end around play, that was a 4th and 1, I believe.
And Singletary's when he avoided, who did he avoid in the backfield? Donovan Wilson against Dallas in the backfield. That was also
nice
a
spin
4th
move.
and 1, I believe. So maybe there were more 4th and 1s than I recall. But either way, that's interesting. Tied for 4th most attempts and then 60%. That's the 8th best conversion rate. So something to keep in mind as you ask for the Giants to try to be more aggressive. Andrew Ilnicki complaining about the phones. Andrew, I get it. We're working on it. Thank you. Can you comment on the league trend, it seems, of quarterbacks having extremely high completion rates? What do we have to do to get there as a team? Well, for one, Daniel Jones the last 2 games have completed over 70% of his passes.
Yeah.
And over the last 3 weeks, it's been 64%. I don't know what it is for the season. You can look that up for me. But I know he's been over 70% the last 2 weeks. Last week was even better than he was against the Browns. What is he on the year?
63.2 on the season.
What was week 1? What was his number?
Week 1,
then?
he was 52.4,
Yeah, that'll do
and
it.
then 57.1. But then over 70 the last
last 2
games.
weeks. So, look, Andrew, the reason for that is pretty simple. The same way we've talked a little bit about your teams having difficulty getting balls downfield because of the too high safety looks and stuff like that. Well, if you're unable to protect long enough to challenge those, quarters and cover 2 schemes with deep throws, and you have to protect long enough to make those throws, you throw short passes. You run wide receiver screens. You run stuff behind the line of scrimmage. As great as Jaden Daniels has been, I think it was either after week 3 or week 4, over 30% of his pass attempts have been behind the line of scrimmage. Like, that's how he has an 80% completion rate. Not that he hasn't been really good otherwise. He has been. And we're going to do like a rookie review, by the way, next week's draft season episode. If you guys want to check it out, we're going to go through how NFL rookies have played so far this season. So that'll be fun to see. But that's what happens. If teams are going to take away the deep ball, you're going to throw shorter, and they're going to let you complete those, short passes because they think if they prevent explosive plays, eventually they're going to force a punt or a turnover before you can get into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the stats across the league, and right now there are only 4 teams that are averaging over 250 passing yards a game.
Is that it?
And 250, that's a solid number. It's not like that's, MVP Patrick Mahomes 5 years ago numbers. It's a solid number. There are 4 teams that are averaging more than that: Seattle, San Francisco, Houston, and Dallas. That's it. So this is like a league-wide thing where passing, I mean, we've seen it. Passing is just somewhat down. It's as you said, it's the increasing of the too high safeties, taking away a lot of those deep shots that we've seen across the league for years now, and strong performances in the run game. I mean, I feel like, I think we spoke about this on Monday, after it seemed like the last, let's call it 5 years or so, the running back market was tanking each year. now running backs are exploding and going off across the league and could result in the running back market sort of bouncing back from what it has been the last couple of years. So yeah, just overall, passing has been down, passing yardage has been down. A lot of it's been, as you said, a lot of shorter completions, more surefire completions, relying on guys for yak instead of taking those deep shots down the field. So,
no, I'm with you, and that's just the trend the league's going towards, guys. And if you watch a college game every week, you just see a bunch of quick passes to the sideline all game long. Like, that's what these college programs do. You got a lot of young quarterbacks in the NFL these days, so you're going to run a lot of that stuff to try to get those college quarterbacks comfortable. Again, I mentioned the way Jaden Daniels, and again, he's thrown down the field more the last couple of weeks, but his first 2 weeks, we talked about heading into the Giants game, so much behind the line of scrimmage. Even week 2 against the Giants, so much with those screens, close to the line of scrimmage. He's done more down the field since, but that's just the way the league's going in terms of how defenses are playing and how offenses are trying to attack them. It's almost, we talk about how teams have not been able to run the ball as well because you don't have as much time to practice it in the offseason because the number of contact practices are so limited now. So those short passes act like a run game. Right? If you get 4 or 5 yards on that little wide receiver bubble screen or even just, a quick hitter out there, that's basically the same as a rush play. So you're getting more of those. Completion percentages will go up. Yards per completion will go down. And that's just going to be how the league goes. But then again, you've got like Geno, he's going to chuck it downfield anyway. That dude does not care, man. Does not care.
Nah, it's a good opportunity for someone like Tyler Newman, maybe get his first career interception.
Yeah, he will throw. He has no fear of throwing the ball into traffic, and he will trust his guy to make plays, especially DK Metcalf on some of those back shoulder sideline throws. Yep. So something to keep an eye on. All right, let's go to Bruce in Florida. He's up next. Hi, Bruce. Bruce going once? All right, Bruce, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. All right, Matt, why don't you give me your final thoughts here? Giants and Seahawks, you'll be on. Well, I don't sound your final thoughts. You're on with Paul again tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So I guess I had to get my final thoughts then, huh? How about that? I wasn't ready for that. Too bad. Look, this is a tough go, guys. The Seahawks are a really good football team. They are well coached on defense. On offense, they're explosive with a ton of playmakers and a quarterback that, frankly, with the way he's playing, is one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFC right now. If you want to put Darnold in there or Baker or Dak or Goff or Purdy, whatever. Yeah, these are the names I'm mentioning. That's why you're laughing.
And you're right.
I totally get it.
If you told me that a month ago, I would have thought you were crazy.
But that's where we are, right? I mean, Geno's playing that level of football. He's playing that well. That's how good he's been. So it's worth keeping an eye on. Whether or not the Giants secondary can continue their recent strong play. They did pretty good against Dallas last week. Dak was efficient, but there weren't a ton of explosive plays. But can you turn over Geno Smith? Can the defense come up with a game-changing play? Can you, and I should have brought this up earlier in the show. Neither one of us did. You and Paul could touch on it more tomorrow. If the Seahawks have a weakness, it's on their offensive line. Stone Forsythe is the starting right tackle. He's a backup. He's having a lot of trouble. Their inside players, their centers and their guards, they've struggled this year. So Geno did a good job of mitigating that against the Lions with his pocket movement, stepping up, getting the ball out quickly. But if the Giants want to slow down this Seahawks offense, they are going to have to win that battle at the line of scrimmage decisively in both the run and pass game. Dexter Lawrence and Nacho have to dominate. Burns and Thibodeau have to be constantly pressuring from the perimeter along with Azeez Ojulari. That's how you're going to slow down this Seahawks offense, by winning up front with your high-paid defensive line, highly drafted defensive linemen and edge rushers. Get after the quarterback. Make Geno's life miserable. Do not let him sit back there and pick apart your secondary, finding these talented wide receivers. Win up front. As for the Giants offense, you should have opportunities to move the ball in this game. We talked earlier in the show about how the competition for the Seahawks defense first 3 weeks wasn't very strong. Last week, all their guys were hurt. I'm still not exactly sure what to make of this unit. If you're right, and some of these guys do end up coming back this week, guys like Leonard Williams, guys like Julian Love, guys like Uchenna Nwosu, all those guys were limited in their practice on Wednesday, which again was a projected practice because it was a walkthrough. It's going to be tougher. You're going to have to protect. They have a good pass rush. They're still top 10 in sacks this year. I think tied for 4th, right? Something like that in terms of number of sacks the Seahawks there. But they're in the top 10. Boye Mafe, if he plays, he's been a really good edge rusher for them. Byron Murphy, we talked about him during draft season. Matt, he is a heck of a defensive tackle, rushing the passer too. So we'll see if these guys play.
Tied for 4th in sacks.
I didn't remember. Right. Tied for 4th. I think 11. Is that they have
14.
this year? 14. So the Giants offense should have some opportunities here. The Seahawks corners, though, are very good. Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, two of the better cornerbacks and one of the best cornerback tandems, in my opinion, in the National Football League. So I think you got to attack the middle of the field a little bit. They play a ton of zone. Don't try to beat those guys one-on-one because they will intercept the ball on you. Don't try to force it outside. I think Len earlier said go to the tight ends middle of the field. I'm down with that. Let's make it happen. So I think you should have some opportunities. You're going to have to score into the 20s, as our emailer pointed out. I think you're going to have to get to 24 if you want to win this game. It's going to be hard to hold that Seattle offense at home to under 20 points. You can't expect it. You got to get to 24 points. I think you can run the ball in this group. I think you can pass it with all the guys they have hurt. I think you got a chance here, guys. It's a tough environment. It's going to be a tough game. I think the Giants will have to play their best game of football than they've played all year in order to win in Seattle this week. I think this is their biggest challenge. Spare maybe the Vikings given how good they were in week 1, but we didn't know that heading in, right? So I think heading into this game, this is the biggest challenge so far this year. Go out there, play your best ball, and when the chips are down and you're in a tough spot, somebody make a damn play, will you please? Whether it's an offense or defense, somebody go up and make a big play above the X's and O's and make something happen when the game's close. That's all I got for you.
For me, which I'm sure Paul and I will get into this more tomorrow, I think the biggest key for the Giants on either side of the ball is going to be slowing down the Seahawks run game. The Giants' run defense the first 2 weeks struggled. We all know that. But then they picked it up the last 2 weeks against Cleveland and Dallas. Cleveland, 69 rush yards. Dallas, 80 rush yards total. So stark improvement from weeks 1 and 2, especially that Commanders game where the Commanders ran for 215 yards. The Seahawks have, and I've said this before, a very talented running back duo in Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. Those two guys, and Kenneth Walker now healthy. He missed 2 games. He's back, clearly healthy after what he did on Monday against Detroit's elite run defense.
Second straight year with an oblique injury for a running back, by the way. Like, is he like pitching or playing outfield, or like just swinging a baseball bat on the side? It's very odd.
I don't know. So the way that he contorted his body on a few of those plays Monday night,
good point.
Doesn't shock me. But similar to what I said going into last week's game against the Cowboys, where I said, Dak's going to get his, CD's going to get his. The same kind of goes for the Seahawks. Like, Geno's going to chuck it. DK Metcalf is going to come up with some catches. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to, he's going to get receptions. If the Giants can take out the running game, though, and force Seattle to basically rely solely on the passing attack, and then tie that into what you were saying with the Giants' defensive line getting pressure on Geno, Geno's numbers were significantly worse when getting pressured this season compared to when not. I think I have them here. So Geno's faced a 33.1% pressure rate this year, 14th highest in the league, and he's been sacked 11 times. When facing pressure, he's completed only 52.2% of his passes. And similar to what we said last week with Dak, it has been for 297 yards, but 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and a 61.6 passer rating.
Yep.
61.6. When not pressured, that number jumps up almost 40 points to 100.8 passer rating. So if the Giants can eliminate or significantly limit the Seahawks run game and force them to constantly be dropping back, Geno constantly dropping back and trying to avoid pressure from Burns, Kayvon, Dexter, that will go a long way in helping the Giants, pick up this road victory, taking out the crowd in Seattle. I mean, anything that the Giants can do on Sunday to limit that crowd noise, obviously, will go a long way in helping them win the game. And if you can eliminate the run and force Seattle to constantly be in, second and long, third and long situations, that's going to go a long way in helping the defense stop this Seattle offense and then Giants taking the victory.
For the love of God, tackle.
Yes.
Kenneth Walker's tough to bring down. DK Metcalf is tough to bring down. Tyler Lockett, Smith-Njigba, Zach Charbonnet. Go down the list. They're all tough to tackle. You have to tackle in this game. Do not let 15 and 20-yard passes become 50-yard touchdowns. Do not let a 10-yard run become a 40-yard touchdown run. Tackle, tackle, tackle. SciTech, have fun with Paul tomorrow, buddy.
Thank you.
For Matthew SciTech, I'm John Schmuck. Thanks for joining us on Big Blue Kickoff Live. We'll see you next time, everybody. It's all presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Giants.